Hello everyone, welcome back to our next session of The Doctor Will See You Now. Here we are in May of 2021. The year is fast bowling along, and into the surgery today we're going to welcome an author whose work I became familiar with only last year. And that moment when you think, this is something special. This is something different. So this delightful book that we're going to talk about has been one of my 2021, you should read this book. So again, it comes highly recommended. And again, this may be an author that you're not yet familiar with, but I'm sure that because there's a book before this one, that when you become familiar with her work, I'm sure, like myself, very greedily, you'll be wanting the third. Anyway, without further ado, let me welcome into the consultation room Julie Anderson. Welcome, Julie. How is everything with you?
Oh, I'm feeling fine, really. That's what I always say when I go to the doctors. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me into your surgery.
It is an absolute pleasure. Moments like this do feel a little bit self-indulgent when you get to talk to an author face-to-face and in depth, and really get to grips with what they've been writing. For viewers who might not be familiar with Julie, she's a professional writer who organises literary events. And if we get a chance at the end, I'll ask Julie a little bit about those events. She's formerly a member of the UK's Senior Civil Service, and she worked in Westminster and Whitehall for a variety of government departments and agencies, including the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister. But we're here to celebrate and to get down to the nitty-gritty of this second novel, Oracle, that has just been published. I mean, it truly is hot off the press. You can still see the steam rising off it, or maybe that's part of the storm that is in the novel. Maybe it's the thunder and lightning that's coming out of those pages. Her work offers us a very interesting character that I want to ask Julie about, and that's Cassandra Cassie Fortune, a civil servant and a GCHQ investigator. The first in the series, again, if you want to catch up with that before reading Oracle, was Plague, published last year, published by Claret. And Julie's also published before that. I'm not sure we'll get a chance to talk about those historical adventure stories, but I really must try and get hold of those.
I'll send you one.
Oh, thank you. And as I say, she's chair of trustees of Clapham Writers, the organisation that's responsible for Clapham Book Festival. And maybe we can have a little moment of book festival organisers, devisers, if time allows. But how does it feel, first and foremost, Julie, to think that the second book is out? And this is the second book published in COVID times, yeah?
It is, yes. Trust me, you know, I get a contract for 3 books, and the first 2 come out into restricted life. You know, the bookshops aren't open; they're just reopening.
Yeah.
But no signings or sessions at literary festivals or for the WI or any of those usual things that you do.
Yeah.
And my publishers had some brilliant ideas when Plague came out. They got some super. They're a very small publisher, but they make up in innovation for what they lack in size. And they got flyers printed to hand out at Westminster Tube Station, because the Plague, as you know, is set in the parish of Westminster. But I mean, A, there was nobody there because everyone was working from home because it was in the middle of the restrictions. And B, no one was going to take a flyer out of some unknown person's hand.
Especially with the word Plague written on it.
With the word, yeah, entitled Plague, you know.
Yeah.
You couldn't make it up, really. And we were going to have the launch at the Civil Service Club, and that closed down, and it's just been one thing after another, really. So the good side of it is that I've done and been involved in quite a lot of things online, and actually made a lot of friends online, which is great.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think what has been necessary has been to find those different ways. But I just think, I think your stamina and your determination has just been admirable in, whatever is going on. I am going to make sure that these books, get heard about, get known, because talking to other authors, and they've maybe not been able to write at all. They've not felt, that thing of, I want to get my work out there. And yet I think, Plague and now Oracle, have, I mean, for me, they are making a mark. And so, hats off to you for doing that. I wanted to say as well, you mentioned Claret Press, and I want to say I think the publishing is beautiful. The book just feels lovely to have.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. The choices that they've made there, I think, are really special, because that sense of you sit down and you think, this isn't going to be just one of your ordinary books. This feels like something different. So yeah, as you say, I think maybe, without wishing to sound too rude, size isn't everything, and having that innovation and having that eye for detail also gives that support to an excellent story. Just lifts it, even more. Wonderful. I've never asked you this in the times that we've met before, but I suppose I should start by asking you, Cassie's profession, and all that she does, is what you write influenced by your own experiences in Westminster and Whitehall?
Yes, is the very obvious answer. It's interesting, actually, because Cassie isn't me, and a friend of mine, a fellow writer who belongs to the writers' circle that I belong to, started out after Plague, which he much enjoyed, started referring to Cassie as your alter ego. And I had to say, no. Cassie is a character. She's a construct. She inhabits the same world that I used to inhabit, or, well, at a much lower level, obviously, but the same sort of world that I inhabited. And she does some of the things she does are things that I have done in my past professional life. So I have experienced it. You'll remember in Plague, there's a big conference, a scene at a big conference, and she watches the whirlpools of power, the way that people move around the room, being attracted to those people who've got power, like a sort of Scylla and Charybdis, moving around. I've done that. I've seen that happen, and it's fascinating to watch. And going to Delphi. I mean, I went to Delphi to a conference on public administration one cold November, and lost my luggage. Would you believe? So in that sense, I bring a lot of what I experienced into the books, though I have to say that my role was not glamorous. It was I encountered no corpses at all.
Damn.
Yeah.
And I promise not to ask you though about skeletons in the closet, because I know those halls of power, they remain closed. However, what I did want to ask you was, did you say she's a construct and she's an intriguing character? Did she begin to form? I mean, before you left, were you thinking about becoming a professional writer?
Yes, I was, but not in any specific sense in terms of forming characters. I, as you know, have owned a home in southern Spain for many years, and spend quite a lot of time over there usually. But yeah, if only. And I was completely transfixed by the history of that place, and I knew that I wanted to write about that. Hence the historical novels that I started out writing. And I knew that before I left the civil service that I would become a writer, and that was my first subject, if you like, stories bringing to life that period in history in that place. Place is hugely important to me in terms of writing. I attended that excellent discussion with Alice and Ursa at the Crime Cymru Festival that you chaired only last week, which was fascinating. Because I think place is incredibly important. So I came to writing through place, if you like, rather than through the characters.
Yeah. What triggers a writer's inspiration, and not even a writer's inspiration, before a writer becomes a writer? You know, when is that moment when you can say, I am a writer, I am, I am in my craft at whatever stage that be.
Yeah.
But I am developing that craft. So Cassie, when did she first, hover on the horizon and say, write me?
Well, it was interesting actually, because I'd written 2 historical adventure stories that I mean were well received. The first of them was longlisted for a prize, so critically fine, but nobody bought books set in 13th century Spain. Damn, bit of a niche market there. I was loath to give up writing about that place and that time. But it was through the Clapham Book Festival that I happened to meet the director of Claret Press, who was at the festival. And she said to me, but you ought to write crime. And I said, and she said, no, you should, because everything that you find in your historical adventure stories, the jeopardy, the suspense, the multiple points of view, the danger, you could transfer all of that into writing contemporary crime or thriller type story, and you can do that. You can write that stuff. So why don't you write it in a genre and for a market which is more popular? So I sort of said, nah, no, that's not me. And then I had to have surgery, and I knew that I'd be laid up for a few months, and I literally couldn't walk around, and that I'd have time on my hands. And then I thought, well, why not have a go? And that's how Plague was born, when I was literally lying on my back reading books about London sewers,
as one does.
As one does, absolutely. Oh, I must show you something actually while I'm here. Yeah. It's this wonderful book, and it's the title that I love. It's called An Underground Guide to Sewers, or Down, Through and Out in Paris and London. I just love the title. Sorry.
Thank you. I am convinced that there will be people watching who will now try to get their hands on that text. So yeah, it's important to share these.
I love books.
Vital resources. Yeah,
I talk about books all the time. So.
I remember interviewing an author in these different times, and she was telling how she first got into writing, and it was that her husband went on quite a long journey, and that gave her time and space to write. And thinking, you were laid up, and that gave you time and space to, the things that had been buzzing around, ideas that had been, or prospects of doing something, and that it took that hiatus in life to then be able to really feel the fire. I wonder if that's what it takes for people to have one of those things need to stop the way they are or have been, in one way or another, in order to make space, make way for that creation. I'm not sure. Now, Julie. I really enjoy what Cassie does. And I love that whole thing of, Cassandra. Is she linked back to, to Greek mythology? And of course, when we come and talk about Oracle, but Cassie was there before. Cassie was there in London. She is not an easy character to warm to necessarily, I don't think. And I wonder, did you purposefully develop her that way so that the reader would be, I don't know, the reader would be intrigued by her as well as the plot, shall we say?
Yes, is the answer. I didn't want her to be the one-dimensional, adorable heroine. Adorable. I don't mean adorable in the sort of pretty or attractive sense, but the sort of protagonist with whom one immediately sympathised.
Yeah.
I thought she'd be far more interesting if she wasn't that, actually. And I also wanted, I was very determined that she would be a modern professional woman. And she would have all those attributes that modern professional women and men have, and not all of them are admirable. I mean, she has many excellent qualities. She is her integrity is unimpeachable. She always tries to do the right thing. She's intellectually curious. She wants to find out about people. She wants to be on the side of the angels. She's also damaged. We haven't yet learned in the books exactly what damaged her, but she is damaged. She left her last posting under a cloud, and her marriage is broken up. So she's not an uncomplex. She's a complicated human being, like most of us are.
Do you know what though? I caught myself at one point though, because there's the sense of at times she can be what we might term bossy.
Oh yes.
But then I'm thinking, am I thinking she is bossy because it's a female character? And if it were a male character doing acting, saying in this way, I just think, oh, here's somebody who is finding the way forward, who knows what to do, and then that's what I really enjoyed, that I'm going along with who's responsible for the evil doings in this book, but it's also making me think about the crimes. It gets us to think about there's some bigger issues that I'd like to discuss as well. But I know for myself, you got me thinking about, oh, wait a minute, am I reacting to this character because she's a woman? And if this character were a man, if you'd written Cassie as Christopher, would I be thinking these things? I mean, did you do that on purpose, or?
Well, sort of, yes. I mean, I wanted, it's something that I think any professional woman experiences. That if there are certain behaviours, and if you behave in that way as a man, you're thought to be, decisive, and you have drive and energy and positivity. If you behave like that and you're a woman, you're thought to be bossy and too fond of yourself, and what does she think she's doing, and all that sort of thing. So I was very determined that Cassie would behave like a professional person. And if people reacted to her in a certain way, then maybe they needed to look at why they were reacting to her in a certain way. I also have to say, however, that in Oracle, she is bossy. She is, and I wanted that relationship she has with her interpreter, Helena. To demonstrate that, but there's a difference between how she behaves in Oracle to Helena, say, and how she behaves to people in Plague, and that's not bossy. That's just decisiveness and and all that. But in that other relationship that she has in Oracle, I think I know she is, because I made her that way. She is bossy, and that's partly to do with her own frustration, because she's used to being able to understand. and she can't understand the language. And Helena is the walking signal, the walking reminder to her all the time that she can't understand. And so that relationship is always going to be quite a difficult one, I think.
Yeah, I totally understand, because I think it's that thing of whenever we are placed in a situation where we're not in control, I think especially, you know, for people who are used to, you know, moving in spheres where everything is at their fingertips, they understand everything, they you know, they have it all worked out so many steps ahead.
Yeah.
And when we're in that situation where we feel so helpless, I think then, yeah, that frustration then manifests itself in certain ways, and it might not necessarily be in very, I don't know, very positive ways, but it's an honest depiction. And I think, yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm glad you said that.
yeah, no, I've really wanted to, you know, because I didn't want to not root for Cassie. I didn't, because I know the way that she goes about those investigations. I think it's important to do so. So thank you. Now, I want to ask you, why did you take us to the ancient temple of Apollo? Okay, because no element is there by chance. So tell me, why did you, I mean, I'm glad you transported us to Greece. I wish it had been a tad warmer, because I think we're needing that, but never mind. It was nice to get out and be transported elsewhere. Why this place?
Well, I mean, as I said to you earlier, and I think, you know, you touched on this in your discussion the other day with Yrsa and Alice. Place is incredibly important, and it's important that everything about the novel is rooted in the place, at least for me. So that it's an integral part of the plot. That it's also a character in its own right, if you like, and Delphi and the Temple of Apollo at Delphi seem to me to be perfect for this story, because not only is it a murder mystery, which has its roots in the past, but it's also a place where people have come for millennia for answers to questions, and questions about themselves. And it's clear that I mean, Cassie was damaged at the start of plague. She then went through a fairly traumatic experience, not wanting to give away the plot or anything. And yet she's, you know, to outward purposes, she's achieved her aim. She's got herself this wonderful job that she was what she wanted, and now she's got to go and do it. But you know, it all comes with a price. And Cassie had to, in this book, face up to that, to the fact that, you know, she's got to confront what's happened to her in the past. She's got to look at herself. And where else do you do that other than the place where "Know thyself" is written on the stones of the temple, which is the Temple of Apollo at Delphi? Because that's what people, you know, that's what people have gone there, obviously for answers to specific questions, to ask the oracle about very specific things, even if they didn't get specific answers by and large. But it's also a place for contemplation, and a place where individuals go to think about, you know thyself, you know, nothing in excess, and an oath leads to mischief, which are the three Delphic maxims. So the character of Cassie needed Delphi. And it was also a way of exploring how the past can impinge upon the present. I mean, so many characters in the book work in the past. I mean, they work at the European Conference Centre, which is based around Delphi. They work in the museum, they work in the temple complex. They're archaeologists or academics, or and it is. Have you been to Delphi, by the way?
No, but I know I must go.
Oh, it's wonderful. It is a wonderful place, and when you're there, it is quite strange. I mean, it's obviously suggestion in a way, but the sense of the sort of the numinous is very close to the surface, because I mean that's a place where people have come, not for centuries, but for thousands of years. Because it's been the centre, a religious centre, and not always to Apollo. I mean, to Gaia before Apollo. And it's almost like there are sort of accretions, layer upon layer of history, and I think that in a way epitomizes also what's in the book, that there are layers of history, and they all impact on the present. So Delphi was just a perfect choice, really.
It is beautiful to hear you talk about that link, or those links, between the present and the past. And I wonder, for yourself, have you always been so interested in history?
Yes.
Because
yes.
I think it's really important, for readers to know that, you get, I don't know how many books in one that you get, that sense of that, yes, there is the murder mystery, and yes, there are those current issues that are raised by what is happening there, but then there's this, there's this layer underneath of taking you back and back and back, so you get that great, I don't know, it's a richness to the text that I think is fascinating. And I wonder, how do you measure it out? I'm thinking, like, making a cake, and how do you ensure that balance? Because there is that balance there. It doesn't say, one element doesn't overpower another element, so you get those various different flavors, shall we say, that come out. How do you stop yourself from doing something too much?
I always write too much, and then I have to edit it myself very hard. But I think it's like talking to other writers. They say the same thing about their research, whatever it is that you're writing about. I mean, because it's like being a civil servant in a way. You become an expert in a certain set of I mean, not just facts, but a certain area of knowledge, and you know it in depth while you're writing your book, and then you move on and you write another book, and you have another area of expertise that you have to acquire very quickly in order to write about it. So I think that there is that element, but I mean, for me, I've always been absolutely fascinated by history, and I did a history degree. Well, I did an English and a history degree, and and my first novels were set in 13th century Spain, and it is quite strange, because even when I wrote Plague, and I was writing there about something that I genuinely knew about anyway, because I worked in that area for so long. The history just kept coming through, and I guess that's like any writer. Lots of you will come through into what it is that you're writing. So, with me, one of the things you get is history.
And thank you for that. Thank you. Just to return a little bit to Cassie, again, for people who haven't read the previous novel, what is her job? What is she tasked to do?
In Oracle specifically?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, she's being sent to be the UK representative at an international conference that's taking place at the European Cultural Centre just outside Delphi, which is a real place, by the way, and lovely. And I'll talk more about that in a wee bit, because I have a thank you that I want to make.
Wonderful.
And she's there to, ostensibly, she's doing a presentation about tax reform. But her real purpose is to connect with the Minister of Finance for Greece, the Greek finance minister, who is opening the conference. Because you frequently get ministers coming to open conferences, as you know, and in this case, it's the Greek finance minister, who, as it happened, happened to go to the London School of Economics for his degree, and who is an Anglophile, and who Cassie's boss, the Prime Minister, wants to talk to privately about various things to do with policy and to do with Europe and so on, but doesn't want to do so in a forum which is open and subject to scrutiny. So he wants Theo Sidaris, that's the name of the Greek finance minister, to come to London, ostensibly on a private trip, but to come to see him. And it's Cassie's job to get him to London and to persuade him to come. Now, before you ask me, I will tell you that actually, yes, that was my job when I went to Delphi. I went to Delphi and I was presenting, but actually the idea was to get the Greek finance minister to come back to London. Not because I worked for the Prime Minister, but because Greece was about to take up the chair of the European Council, just as it is in the novel. And that's a very influential position in terms of determining what the agenda is in terms of policy within Europe. So my bosses wanted to have the conversation with him. And one way of getting him over here was to send someone, me in this instance, over to do a presentation that he would find interesting and want to follow up. So that was what I was tasked with doing. Now, Cassie is tasked with doing something similar, but of course, because she's much more high-powered, it is much more high-powered. And the idea is to get the minister back to Britain. Does that answer the question?
It does. It's wonderful, because it's that, why is she there, and what is the purpose? Now, it looks like we could say it's a locked room mystery in a way, although it's conference centre, and that backdrop of the storm. But I love the fact that idea of it's not. It's not a Gothic mansion. It's a very different place, and I wonder, and it's obviously a place that means a lot to you, and I like that. So you mentioned you wanted to give a shout out. So first of all, tell me why this conference centre. Why did it lend itself to murder and mayhem?
Well, it was quite odd because when I was there in November, and you are very high up there. I mean, it is high up on the slopes of Mount Parnassos, which is one of the biggest mountains in Greece. Thousands and thousands of feet high. I was there in November, and the book is set in November, and the weather was. I mean, it is a skiing centre when the snows come. And the weather was very sort of wild, and I was sitting in the canteen dining room area with a group of people who were also delegates to the conference, and the lights were flickering and the storm was raging outside, and somebody said, my God, this would be an amazing place for a Poirot, and thus little seeds and all that, small acorns. So 20 odd years later, I thought, yeah, why not? It would be. It's and it sort of fitted, because Plague wasn't the classic murder mystery. It was much more of a pacey thriller. This, and I wanted this to be different. I wanted this to be much closer to the classic murder mystery, which is, as you say, not quite locked room, but country house murder, or Agatha Christie, or one of those, and the conference centre was an ideal place to locate it, because it is quite isolated. I mean, it's a modern conference centre. you have to have pretty bad weather for it to become isolated, and it does have Wi-Fi, and it doesn't have problems with its phones. And I had to put that in the afterward actually, and say, this isn't likely to happen at the European Conference Centre at Delphi.
Exactly. If somebody suggests, you're being invited to a conference there, thinking, I'm not going. I know what happens there. It's just
absolutely
no.
But I must thank a lady called Maro Nikopoulou, who is the director of performance and arts there, who, in the absence of my being able to get there because of COVID, actually read the book. She is a great fan of detective novels, and she read the book through and suggested lots of things that I might refine if I wanted to better reflect Delphi today, as opposed to Delphi 20 years ago when I went there. And I did have to change things. Because Delphi has got much bigger, apart from anything else.
I think that is so important. Again, in that discussion over the weekend, thinking, when places change, if you set a story, if you set a series in a certain place, and if that changes, I know it's fiction, but you want to reflect those changes, and I just think how marvelous, to have had, that you've got those contacts, and that you can ensure that the writing reflects, what is necessary. Now I have maybe a tricky question, and I know we're not allowed, plot spoilers or anything like that. So I wonder if I can ask you, one of the strands running through the book is the notion of justice. The strapline on the front of the book says "Blood calls for blood." But I wanted to ask you, what does justice mean for you? So we don't have to give anything away of what's in the book, but justice for you, what does that mean?
Well, I think it means quite a lot of different things, which is sort of why it's intriguing to explore, actually. I guess the other thing is that people who like reading the sort of murder mysteries and crime stories, and I do, I like reading them, let alone writing them, tend to be justice seekers by nature. I mean, we want to find out. We want resolution. We want perhaps the baddie not to be caught all the time, but most of the time we want the world to be set right again after it, the crime has knocked it out of joint. So I think it's sort of integral to the crime novel, really, the idea of justice. But I think there are lots of different types of justice. So you've referred to the strapline, which is blood calls for blood, which is the oldest form of justice, the blood justice, if you like, the justice whereby if a member of your family is killed, you can go and demand the life of a family member of the person from the family who did the killing. That sort of eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, Old Testament justice, if you like. Yeah. And I think that's certainly one kind of justice. It's quite a brutal justice, and it's also a justice that is cyclical and never ends, because there is always another reason for vengeance.
Where does that stop?
Where does that stop?
End? Yeah.
And I think that's very neatly encapsulated in quite a lot of Greek drama. That's another reason why Delphi and Greece is important, in that and in particular the Oresteia by Aeschylus, which actually opens in Delphi and surprisingly concludes in Athens, just as does Oracle, and also includes, I think, what is the first representation in Western literature anyway of a jury trial of sorts on the Areopagus in Athens. But that beautifully juxtaposes the distinction between in Aeschylus the Furies, the spirits of vengeance, if you like, who will hunt down Orestes and kill him because he killed his mother, even though his mother killed his father. And you have that ongoing House of Atreus problem whereby every generation has to carry this forward. or bring it to a conclusion. And in the Eumenides by Aeschylus, it's brought to a. Do you know the play? I'm probably talking to someone who knows it. So.
No, but please tell us, because it's it's good to hear these things.
Well, that's resolved in Athens in this first jury trial, if you like, in which the counsel for the defence is Athena, the goddess of wisdom. So guess which way that's going to go then, you know. But anyway, but the point being that when Aeschylus was writing it in 5th century Athens had developed a system of law, of jurisprudence, whereby individuals did not seek blood justice; they sought justice from the state, and the law applied equally to all. And you know, someone was brought before a jury of their peers, and there were arguments for and arguments against, and there was a resolution. And so I wanted to, just as Aeschylus did, and I'm not pretending to be any Aeschylus myself, but to juxtapose these two different types of justice, the blood justice, if you like, and the justice of the law. And of course that features throughout Oracle, that sort of tension between the two. Between
those two aspects, yeah. And I think that for me is probably, that's what gripped me throughout the book. Now, Julie, I am aware of the time, and like most doctors, it's a bit like
you rushed off your feet.
Yeah, no. But if it isn't too wrong to ask, is there another book on the way?
There is, and I am writing it. I did sort of allude, I think, at the top of the programme to saying that I got a contract for 3 books, that it isn't contractual, but that's what I agree with the publishers. And so it was always conceived of as a trilogy of 3 books. And in the next book, which is called Opera, Cassie will return to London, determined that she's going to put her house in order and confront her past.
Wow. So it's there that we're going to find out about why she is the way she is, maybe?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, her more recent past as well, because if she doesn't sort that out, he'll come and find her. Yeah. So, you know, there is that. Yeah, so I'm sort of halfway through writing that now. And that will come out at some point next year. Not sure when.
And I really, really hope that when Opera emerges, that you will be able to go on a book tour as we know it.
Real one.
Yeah, that you will be able to be at festivals. I mean, I would like to say, you know, when Newcastle Noir is back in real life, please, Julie, will you come to us? You know, providing that it's safe and it's all as it should be. Please, would you come? It would be my
pleasure. Yeah, it would be my absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Because I would love, you know, I would love to have this kind of conversation on the stage with other authors there. I just think, you know, I'm so grateful that, you know, that you've agreed to be here in the consultation room to talk about, you know, your work today. But you know,
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It has been a pleasure. I suspect that we could talk for hours, actually.
we could indeed, and you know, and I look forward to, you know, those other opportunities when we can do this, and most of all, I look forward to the opportunity of saying to you, I will meet you in London. Let's go for a coffee or something stronger, and let's continue this.
And come to the Clapham Book Festival.
Excellent.
We are actually doing it this year, amazingly. Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
16th of October. It's a much truncated program. It's just one day, but we've got a couple of literary walks led by writers, and we've got Sir Michael Morpurgo is coming to talk about his latest book, and Ben McIntyre is coming to talk about Red Sonja. So there you go. Plug for Clapham Book Festival.
Excellent, excellent. I will do my best. COVID,
Yes, we'll do.
COVID and all things permitting. But for now, another shout out for this glorious book. All the very best. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.